All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating textual argument from a piece called The Hollow Altar. It is essentially a complete breakdown of why modern Sunday morning church services are designed the exact way they are, right down to the lighting cues and the chord progressions. Whether you're a lifelong churchgoer or honestly just someone fascinated by history and human behavior, this is a super compelling architectural look at modern worship. So let's jump in. We begin with this highly relatable ache that the author diagnoses. Picture this. You've got two hypothetical churchgoers. First, there's a guy in the back row. He loves his church, the coffee is great, the sermons are super practical, but lately, he leaves the Sunday service feeling mysteriously thin. It's kind of like he sat down for this massive meal but can't actually remember eating anything. Then, on the flip side, you have Gloria. She's a highly trained keyboardist on the worship team. She hits her cues perfectly, hands are going up in the crowd, the room is absolutely electric. Yet, sitting in her car before soundcheck, she feels this low ache, a sneaking suspicion that despite the highly produced service, something essential is just missing. Have you ever felt that? That weird, lingering emptiness? Well, the text argues that both of these people are experiencing the exact same architectural void. The source text actually gives a specific name to this emptiness. It calls it the hollow altar. The core argument here is that modern worship is built almost entirely around what you, the worshiper, bring to the table. Think about it. The staging, the swelling music, the pastor's emotional vulnerability, it's all engineered, with very real skill, by the way, to produce awe, sincerity, and surrender. But the author says the altar is hollow because the physical delivery of a divine gift has been removed. Without a tangible gift being handed down from God to the people, like grace or forgiveness, the worship hour literally has to be filled up with manufactured emotional experiences. Otherwise, the whole thing collapses. The fog machines and the slick transitions aren't really the disease here. They are just a symptom of trying to fill a vacuum. Okay, so how did we actually get here? Let's look at how this builds chronologically. This highly engineered experience didn't just start out of nowhere with modern lighting rigs. The text traces it all the way back to the 1820s to a lawyer-turned-preacher named Charles Finney. Finney basically invented what he called the anxious bench. This was a literal row of seats right at the front of the church where people were heavily pressured to make an immediate physical decision for Christ. And this single move, it completely shifted the focus of salvation to human action in the front row. Fast forward to the 1950s, and Billy Graham scales this exact same method up to these massive stadium crusades. Then jump to 1975. Bill Hybels and Willow Creek take this model, survey suburbanites to see what they want, and build the seeker-sensitive consumer church. The church essentially started asking the consumer what they wanted rather than just delivering what it had historically given. And this brilliantly illustrates the theological core of the author's critique. It all comes down to a massive shift from what's called monergism to synergism. Now, for over 1,000 years of Western Christianity, the dominant view was monergism. That basically means God does all the saving work, and you just passively receive it as a free gift. Faith is received, not achieved. Make sense? But Finney's anxious bench flipped the script completely over to synergism. Synergism says, sure, God offers salvation, but your active human decision is the engine that actually makes it happen. The author points out that because modern evangelicalism runs on this synergistic engine, the entire Sunday service turns into a venue designed to force the worshiper to generate an action, whether that's a decision, a surrender, or just a big feeling. Now, what's really wild about this slide is how this consumer theology accidentally birthed a massive, totally standardized worship industry. Modern churches license their music through a service that tracks the top 25 most sung songs. Because this synergistic model demands an emotionally resonant, completely reliable product every single Sunday, just a handful of organizations, we're talking Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation, and Maverick City, end up authoring the vast majority of the emotionally calibrated songs sung all across America. The author highlights this as a crazy historical anomaly. Instead of drawing from a rich, deep hymnal built over thousands of years, countless churches are out there singing the exact same four-chord loops, designed in a few studios and mathematically guaranteed to trigger the exact same emotional peak. And the author argues that those specific chord progressions and lyrics reliably produce a vibe that worshipers are essentially trained to interpret as an encounter with God. Historically, Christian music was really just a vehicle to carry the words, the Psalms, the creeds, the core teachings. If you felt something, hey, that was a nice bonus side effect. But in the modern room, the feeling is the actual object. The words are simply the vehicle used to get you to that feeling. Worship basically turns into this endless pursuit of a temporary emotional high. And the author points out the obvious problem with chasing a feeling. It fades by Tuesday, leaving you totally starved and wondering why your huge Sunday encounter didn't sustain you through the work week. So, having explored the cause of all this, the text asks, is there an alternative to this hollow altar? To find out, we follow that same guy from the back row as he visits an older historic confessional Lutheran church just to impartially observe a completely different architecture of worship. And right away, he notices the contrast. There is absolutely no fog machine. There's no overly enthusiastic worship leader telling him he needs to lean in. It is just an ancient order of service that starts systematically handing him the exact things he didn't even realize he was starving for. The crucial point in this environment comes during the moment of pastoral absolution. The man sitting in the pew reads a confession of his sins out loud. And then the pastor stands up and speaks this incredibly brief, powerful declaration. He doesn't say, hey, let's hope God forgives us today, or if you just surrender enough right now, you'll be forgiven. He simply states, on the authority of Christ, God, through his grace, has forgiven all your sins. Boom, past tense. The author uses this to underscore the profound shock this guy experiences. After spending 15 years trying to earn his way to an emotional encounter, being literally handed a bold not guilty verdict, completely outside of his own effort, is an absolute game changer.
According to the text, this highlights a massive structural difference in the pulpit itself. On the left side, you have application preaching. This is the kind the man had heard his entire life. It treats the Bible like a self-improvement project, where the pastor acts essentially like a spiritual life coach. You know the drill. 3 easy steps to be a better spouse, or 5 ways to live on mission. But on the right side, you have delivery preaching. In this model, the preacher acts purely as an instrument delivering divine gifts. The sermon is no longer the stressful bridge that you have to sweat and strive to walk across. Instead, it's a delivery vehicle that brings grace directly to you, right exactly where you are sitting.
The text even demystifies this further through, of all things, Greek grammar. Yeah, I know, grammar, but bear with me because this is fascinating. It looks at the famous Bible passage, the Great Commission. Usually, this is preached as a heavy, exhausting to-do list for the believer. Go, make disciples, baptize, teach, do it all. But in the original Greek, make disciples is actually the only command. Words like baptizing and teaching are participles. They aren't human imperatives. They just show the exact means by which God is doing the saving work. The author argues that this completely takes the pressure off of human charisma and puts the focus entirely on the tools God instituted. You aren't the engine generating the faith. You are simply the recipient.
To conclude this explainer, we leave you with the ultimate question posed by the source material. By contrasting the engineered, synergistic modern megachurch with the historic, monergistic liturgy, we are forced to ask ourselves, are you the project manager of your own faith? Are you treating worship as an altar where you must endlessly generate devotion and chase emotional highs? Or is worship a place where you can just sit back, confess your inability, and simply receive the gifts being handed to you? It's a powerful paradigm shift, and it leaves us asking one huge question. What are we really building our rooms for?